Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next live stream. This is number 3 on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. here in New York. And I have with me my partner in crime, my administrative partner, Jill. She's going to be going through a lot of the questions with you today, but just a couple of housekeeping items for you first. As always, this information on the live stream is for education and information purposes only, and I've not conducted a formal interview with you, so the answers may or may not apply to your specific situation. So please speak to a competent professional before acting on the information you hear here today. Just pointing out what we're going to be going through. There are 3 types of questions. One is the absolute type. 1 plus 1 will always equal 2. I will tell you there are very few of those when it comes to Social Security. The second is a fact-based question. That means that the question will come out and the answer that I give will be directionally correct for most of you. And then the third will be a information gathering question. I'll take the information that comes in because sometimes questions come in 2 or 3 thoughts, and I'll put them together and I'll frame the things to think about so that you can come to the answer on your own terms. Now, we're going to have a little bit of fun here today. We're going to start off this live stream with a question for you. And we're going to ask you one question about Social Security and survivor benefits, and you're going to answer A, B, or C in the chat. And then Jill is going to let you know what the answer is, and we'll talk about it right after that. So Jill, maybe you can lead the way with the question for the group.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good to be back. The question is, there are 2 types of survivor benefits, a lump sum payment and monthly survivor benefit. How much is the lump sum payment?
Is it A?
Is it A, $522, B, $255, and C, $1,055?
So just put your answer in the chat box and we'll tally it up and talk about this question in about 30 seconds. Okay.
All right, so we're having some answers coming in. Seeing a lot of B, 1A, C's, a lot of B's. A lot of B's, B, 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 C.
All right.
More B's, a couple C's. It looks like B is the answer.
Yep, and B is the answer. So for those of you who are in the B camp, you are correct. The reason it's B, and honestly, it is a very low number. It's $255. This survivor benefit lump sum payment was put in place in the mid-50s, and it was never indexed. I suppose at the time it was for funeral benefits, but to be candid, it didn't come until months after, so I can't even imagine how someone could use that to pay for a funeral unless they borrowed money. But for those of you that answered B, you are correct. All right, why don't we go to questions, Jill?
Yes, and I want to remind everyone, if you have some questions, please do put them in the chat box, and we will try to get to those live. We do have some questions that came in prior to the live, and those are some of the questions that we'll start with now. So, Geoff, the first question is, my sister, age 61, lost her husband recently. She has a good job and will have a decent Social Security payment. She also qualifies for a survivor benefit. What should she do?
So this is the third of the type of questions that I was talking about, in that the answer depends. So I'm going to frame the issues. So there are 3 different issues here. Should she take her own primary insurance amount? Should she take the survivor benefit? And what does she do about both of those while she's working? So the answer is going to be, first, if you're working, you have to treat the survivor benefit as any other type of benefit from Social Security, and it's going to be subject to the earnings test. So if you're working and collecting a survivor benefit or your own benefit, you're going to be subject to limits. And in the case of someone who's 61 years old, that limit is $23,400 if you collect both the survivor benefit and work at the same time. You can't earn more than $23,400 before having to give some of it back, and that's $1 for every 2 that you earn over that amount. If you happen to be age 67 or in your full retirement age year, and this question was about someone who was 66 entering their full retirement age year, the threshold would be $62,160, and you'd have to give back $1 for every $3 over the limit. So the answer to that portion of the question is pay attention to how much you earn if you draw from Social Security. Now, the question regarding should you take your own survivor benefit or take your own primary insurance amount, this is one of the few benefits from Social Security where you can start one and switch to the other, and you can do it and maintain the full benefit. Sometimes if you take the spousal benefit and then switch to your own primary insurance amount, there's something called dual entitlement, and the second payment is reduced a bit. But in this case, the survivor benefit and the primary insurance amount are not reduced. One last point on this, and that is you maximize your survivor benefit at age 67, and you maximize your own primary insurance amount, age 67, assuming that's your full retirement age. And for most of you, it's either 66 and 10 months or 67. And you maximize your own primary insurance amount at age 70. So if they're close, then consider taking the survivor benefit and letting your own primary insurance amount grow.
Okay, great. We have a question coming in the chat box. And just a reminder for tonight, we are focusing on survivor benefits. There are some questions coming in that are unrelated. And so if at the end we have time, we'll try to come back to some of those. But here's a question for you in regards to survivor benefits. Can I collect survivor benefits until I'm 70 and then switch to mine?
So yes, and in fact, it's almost as if you read my mind when you put that in there. I think you probably put that in there before I was explaining the duality of survivor benefits and your own primary insurance amount. You can absolutely collect survivor benefits until you're age 70 and then switch to your own benefit. And at that point, if your full retirement age is age 67 anyway, you get 124% of your primary insurance amount.
Okay, great. So another question came in from Bobby. My husband has Social Security and draws a government pension. If he passes, how will I be affected?
So if your husband has Social Security and draws a government pension, I can't speak to the government pension because I don't know what pension your husband is receiving their pension from, if it's military or if it's a state or if it's a municipality. But in terms of the Social Security payment, if you were married to your husband for more than 9 months, and I'm assuming that's probably the case here, then you would qualify for survivor benefits, and in that case, you would effectively take over his Social Security payment with a haircut. That haircut is really your age when you claim the survivor benefits. The younger you claim the survivor benefits, the more the haircut is. If you wait until your full retirement age, then you can get 100% of his Social Security payment.
Okay, great. Next question. If both people are over full retirement age and collecting, and the spouse who has the higher payment passes away first, can the surviving spouse give up their benefit and collect the higher payment?
Yes. Yes, you can. And a variation of this is, can you give up your benefit and collect the higher payment and let your current benefit grow? The answer to that is no, until you reach full retirement age. Once you reach full retirement age, your benefit can continue to grow from age 67 to 70.
Okay, great. Next question. I'm divorced. I was married to my ex from 15 years. Do I qualify for a survivor benefit if he passes away?
Yes, you do. Usually, the question really depends. The answer depends on a couple of things. If you remarried before age 60, then you can't be remarried to your new partner and at the same time collect survivor benefits from the deceased. But if you're not remarried or you remarried after 60, then you can. If you remarried after 60, then you can choose to take your survivor benefit or the spousal benefit from your new partner. And the last part of this is if you remarried before 60 and you subsequently got divorced, then you can take the survivor benefit from your first partner.
Okay, great. So what is the earliest age a person can be to claim survivor benefits?
So there are three answers to this: 60, 50, and any age. And let me explain to you what I mean. You can claim survivor benefits at age 60, and you can assume your partner's, your deceased partner's survivor benefit with a fairly significant haircut. It's about 71% of their payment in most cases. If you're disabled, then that is age 50. And if you are caring for their children, it's at any age as long as they're under age 16. So it's a multiple part question and it has a multiple part answer. That last part, though, is what's called a child in care or a child care survivor benefit, which basically means that you have it's different than the standard survivor benefit, where it's the spousal benefit. It's there so that you can care for the children while they're still young, and it doesn't stop you from claiming a larger survivor benefit if once the child reaches age 16. If you don't want to collect your survivor benefit, or if you're not of age, if you're not 60 or 50, depending on your situation, you can still let that grow and collect the standard sized survivor benefit.
Okay, great. So another question in the chat box. Can I draw my full local government pension and my husband's Social Security? Can I draw both if he passes? I'm 69, he's 77.
Well, I don't know what the rules are around your full local government pension, but the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset have been reduced. Actually, they've been eliminated. So on the Social Security portion, yes, you can. I'd have to talk to you about what the rules are with your full local government pension.
Okay, next question. My wife and I both collect Social Security, and she started collecting before full retirement age. How are survivor benefits affected in that circumstance?
So if your wife collected Social Security before full retirement age, I'm assuming the question is your survivor benefits if your wife passes. And if that's the case, the base amount is reduced to whatever she is receiving. And so you as a survivor, when you file for survivor benefits, use that base, and then you take your age at the time that you file for survivor benefits, and it's a haircut. I happen to have the schedule here, so I can just give you a sense. If you're age 60, then the haircut is 71.5% of the survivor's or the deceased payment. 62, 75.6%, 79.6%, excuse me. 63, 83.7%, 64, 87.8%, 65, 91.9%, 66, 95.9%, and age 67, 100%. So if you file for the survivor benefit at age 67, you get it 100% of their reduced payment. Now, there is something called a widow's limit, which effectively means that you probably would be capped out at 82.5% of their larger primary insurance amount, but there are a lot of things that have to happen for that, and probably more in-depth discussion than the question you were asking.
All right, next question. Candy asks, if surviving spouse is full retirement age, but deceased passes prior to full retirement age, how does the timing of survivor's benefits work?
So this is one of those questions where there are a couple of different variables here, and I'm gonna add to your question, because I think what you're asking is, assuming he hasn't filed yet, then what is the Social Security survivor benefit? So if he hasn't filed and he died before full retirement age, the SSA gives you the credit for that, and you actually get the full retirement age benefit. So the SSA assumes he had waited until full retirement age, and you get his full retirement age benefit would be 100%. Now, then it comes down to that haircut we talked about before, Candy. So if you are under full retirement age yourself, then whatever the full retirement age benefit would be for him, and let's just say it's $2,000. If it's $2,000 and you are age 65 and you get basically 90% of that, well, there's going to be just under $200 taken off of that payment. If you waited until age 67, well, then it'd be 100%.
Okay, Gags is asking, I'm 64 years old and on disability. My wife is 67 and is also on disability. When I die, does she get my full amount?
So Gags is 67?
She's 64.
She's
64 years old and on disability. And my wife is 67 and is also on disability.
Okay. So, Gags, if you're 64 and your wife is age 67, we're talking about Social Security survivor benefits, which is the retirement benefit, not the disability benefits here. But if you're 64, your Social Security payment would be approximately 80% of the payment that you would receive if you filed at full retirement age, assuming you haven't filed, of course. So that's the starting point for your spouse. So your spouse, who is age 67, already qualifies for 100% of that. The closer you get to full retirement age, the larger that 80% becomes. If you're age 65, it's 86.66%. If you're age 66, it's 93.33%. And if you're age 67, it's 100%. But since your wife is already age 67, she has no haircut on your payment.
Okay, so what is the earliest age a person can be to claim survivor benefits?
Well, this is the same question that was asked before, which was age 60 if you are not disabled, or age 50 if you are.
Okay, Chuck is asking, what is the difference between spousal and survivor benefits?
Spousal benefits and survivor benefits, this is probably one of the best questions that could be asked, because people get these confused all of the time. I love this question. So they both start with an S. They both have a payment to the partner. And so people think that they must be the same thing, or they must be similar, but they're actually not. So a spousal benefit, if you are working and you have your own earned income and you have your own work record, you qualify for what's called the primary insurance amount. But your spouse, who may or may not have worked, or maybe they worked a low-paying job, or maybe they want to wait to claim their own Social Security payment, qualifies for up to 50% of your Social Security payment at full retirement age. That's called your primary insurance amount. It's 100% at full retirement age. So if your primary insurance amount was $2,000 at full retirement age, when your spouse files, she gets a percentage of that. He or she gets a percentage of that, depending on who we're talking about. Their payment isn't based on your age. It's based on two things. One, you have to have filed first. You can't, the spousal benefit can't be claimed until the primary insured files for their own Social Security. And second, they themselves have a full retirement age. And for most people, as I said before, it's age 67. So that half of your Social Security payment, that spousal benefit, which is 50%, it's haircutted from age 67 backwards. If your spouse was age 67, it's 50% of your full retirement age benefit. If your partner's age 66, it's 45.83%. Age 65, it's 41.66%, so forth and so on, all the way down to 32.5% at age 62.
All right, next
Wait,
question.
so that was part one. That was the
okay.
spousal benefit. The survivor benefit, sorry about that. The survivor benefit basically means that instead of 50% of the primary insurance amount, you assume the primary insurance amount, the full primary insurance amount, but that's also reduced based on the age that you file for the survivor benefit. Okay.
Okay, next question from Doug. I'm planning on waiting until 70 to claim Social Security to provide a larger survivor benefit to my wife, as my benefit will be quite a bit larger than hers. If I pass prior to 70, what amount can she get?
Yeah. So this is a very common question, Doug, and it is one of the most common questions, frankly, and because people think about Social Security and they really have four levers that they're pulling. One is, I just want as much money as I can possibly get. So what is the absolute perfect age for me to retire, assuming that you know the end date, and nobody knows the end date, but you know, you give it a guess, you talk to your doctor, and so people try to game that a little bit. And that is bucket number one. Bucket number two is, I want to protect the people that I leave behind, which is your question, Doug. How can I maximize the payment for them? And so the answer is pretty clear. So if you're age 70 when you file for Social Security, you will maximize the survivor benefit. But because you haven't filed and because nobody is guaranteed tomorrow, the closer you get to 70, the better. But the SSA realizes this. And so for the person who says, I want to protect my family, and I'm not going to file for Social Security, if something happens to them before age 70, if it's before full retirement age, then the SSA gives you credit for being at full retirement age. So the base is 100%. If it's after full retirement age, then the SSA gives you credit for the day of passing. So let's just say that you were 67 and a half. Well, instead of 100% of your Social Security payment, the base would be 104%. If you were 68, it'd be 108%. If you were 69, it would be 116%. And if you were age 70 and had not hit the button on the filing application, then it would be 124%. So the SSA will give you credit up till the date of death if it's over full retirement age, or full retirement age if you're under full retirement age.
All right, next question from Timothy. My husband is collecting Social Security and I started collecting at 62. If husband passes, what benefit would wife receive as spousal benefit?
So if I understand this, partner A is 62 and started collecting Social Security. Is that right?
Yes, my husband's collecting Social Securities and I started collecting at 62.
Okay. And so there is, we don't know, your question is what happens to the survivor benefit if you assume the survivor benefit. I think that's the question. I don't know what age your partner started collecting Social Security, but I'm going to make the assumption that it was age 62, just because it's probably a good question to answer anyway. There's something called the widow's limit, and the widow's limit basically works like this. If you started collecting Social Security at age 62, you get 70%, approximately 70% of your full retirement age benefit. Now, if the SSA just said, you know what, that's your base, and then you take that and you haircut it, people could end up with a ridiculously small number. And so they squint. And somebody somewhere, probably in some congressional back room, said, hey, we've got an idea. We can't really let people get 70% of 70% because they're going to end up with less than half in that instance. So why don't we create a scenario where if they're willing to wait, then we can meet them a bit halfway. And that's called the widow's limit. So even if your partner filed for Social Security at age 62 and they were getting 70%, that's no longer your base, as long as you wait until 62 and 9 months to file for the survivor benefit. Now, why is it 62 and 9 months? Well, the survivor benefit ticks up from 71.5 at age 60 to 100% at age 67. And between 62 and 63, it's between 79.6 and 83.7%. And at exactly 62 and 9 months, it's at 82.5%. Now, truth be told, the SSA is blurring two different calculations into one, and everybody knows they're blurring two different calculations into one. But as long as you wait until 62 and 9 months, your floor is going to be 82.5%.
Okay, next question is from Buzz. If I pass before claiming Social Security, will my wife be able to claim anything? She does not qualify. School teacher who did not pay into Social Security.
Yep. So, Buzz, check into the elimination of the windfall and elimination provision and GPO, because she might qualify for Social Security now, but that's a different live stream than this one. But back to you now. So yes, probably so, assuming that you meet the marriage requirement of 1 year. Then yes, you will. The SSA will assume that it will give you credit for having reached full retirement age. If you haven't filed for Social Security, they'll give you your full retirement age as the starting point. That's your base, and then whatever age your wife is will be the haircut. So if your wife was age 67 when she collected the survivor benefit, and you had passed when you were 62, she would still get 100% of your primary insurance amount because you never filed.
Okay, how long do survivor benefits last?
Theoretically, they could last until you pass. There are a couple of ways that might not, but once you start collecting survivor benefits, they're yours until you do something to stop them from being yours. And one might be to remarry and collect a spousal benefit. You can't collect both the spousal benefit and your own survivor benefit at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. Or you might have a job and you make a lot of money and your own Social Security payment is larger than the survivor benefit. You can't collect both the Social Security payment and your own Social Security payment and the survivor benefit, so you would choose the larger of the two. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you would choose the larger of the two and let the other one grow. So in that case, in that instance, you would effectively choose the larger one, and you could stop your survivor benefit simply because it's better for you to not take it. So unless there's something that happens which you would be in control of, most likely, you could collect it until the end, I suppose.
Okay, Susan is asking, my husband waited till age 70 to file for his Social Security. If he passes before me, would my survivor benefit be the amount he collected at 70 or his full retirement amount he would have received at age 67?
Yep. So this is a common question because the Social Security Administration has so many different rules and so many different calculations. So I'm going to answer your question and then I'm going to explain why it is the way that it is. So the base for you would be his Social Security payment at age 70. So 124% of his full retirement age benefit. because that is assuming his full retirement age is age 67, because he waited until age 70. So you get that haircut for your age when you claim the survivor benefit. Now, assuming you're at full retirement age, well, then you get 124% of his primary insurance amount. But that schedule that we talked about earlier is the schedule that would reduce that 124%, but that schedule would be on the 124%, not on the 100%. Now, the reason that people get this confused is because if any of you have downloaded this, by the way, I'm going to be putting it back out there for you in the next week or so. I took it offline about 2 months ago, but this is the Social Security Quick Guide, and it's absolutely free. I put it together for you. You'll see on the right-hand column here that some of the benefits extend and grow until age 70. Other benefits stop at full retirement age. And so people get confused about that. Which one applies to full retirement age? Which one applies to age 70? And how do I know the difference? But basically, the only one that actually extends to age 70 is the primary insurance amount. And by extension, that means the survivor benefit is assumed at age 70, whatever it was for your husband. Okay.
A lot of gratitude coming into the chat box.
My pleasure.
All right, Jim is asking, my wife was foreign service and paid into Social Security her entire career. She was told she could only take FS retirement and not Social Security. She passed at age 72. SSA told me no survivor benefits. Is that true?
I don't know enough about your situation, but if this question was asked prior to the elimination of the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, it's probably not true anymore. But send me an email on this at livestream@holyschmidt.com, and I'll look into it for you and give you a better answer. Just livestream is one word at holyschmidt.com.
Okay, next question is from Maria. I still work and earn approximately $65,000, and I am 67 years old. I want to file for survivor benefits from my deceased spouse. Because I still work, can I receive the spousal benefit?
So I think she's asking if she can receive the survivor benefit. And you can either choose the survivor benefit or your own Social Security benefit, but you can't choose both. And if you're still working and earning $65,000 a year, but you are age 67, you do not have to worry about working while collecting Social Security. So you can continue to work. The good news, and whether it's survivor benefits or your own primary insurance amount, you can work and collect the benefit. A strategy here might be to claim the survivor benefit and let your own Social Security grow until age 70, where it's 124%. But you'd have to look at what your own Social Security payment is, what the survivor benefit is, and see if that's a good strategy. I would imagine it's probably where you would land, but go on to mysocialsecurity.com, look at your own Social Security payment, and compare that to the survivor benefit, and you'll have a pretty good idea.
Someone's asking where they can find that Social Security spreadsheet guidelines.
So this I had online until the end of February, and I took it down because there was just some changes that were happening at the SSA, and I didn't want to send something out that was inaccurate. But it is updated now, so I'll put it out. Just check out my next video on Social Security on the channel. Check out my next video on Social Security on the channel, and subscribe if you haven't, because it may be the video after that, and I will re-release this. I just want to make sure that the data is up to date for the current version.
Okay, next question is, can my wife receive spousal benefits 50% of my full retirement age while I'm alive and then survivor benefits when I die.
Yes. So your wife can collect spousal benefits and then switch to survivor benefits, and it happens all the time. And I can't really think of any scenario where it would be advantageous for your wife to keep well, first of all, once you pass, your wife can't continue to collect spousal benefits. She would have to switch to survivor benefits. But also the survivor benefit's going to be bigger.
All right, next question. I'm 63 and have a job. What happens if someone is working and claiming survivor benefits?
So if you're 63 and you have a job and you're collecting survivor benefits, you will be faced with the earnings limit. So in this case, in 2025, if you earn more than $23,400, every $2 you make above that amount, you have to return $1 back to the SSA. I would say if you've already started collecting Social Security and you haven't done this, the SSA is now quite punitive in terms of collecting back Social Security. So the faster you let them know that you're working, the better. In fact, I believe that now they take 50% of every Social Security check until you get caught up. Now, you don't lose it. What ends up happening is it gets added back to your account, so to speak. So you have your Social Security payment reduced or in some cases eliminated, depending on how much you're earning. And once you reach full retirement age, if you haven't, or once you stop working and start reclaiming Social Security, anything that you gave back to the SSA or that they withheld, if you notify them that you were working, you get back in the form of a larger Social Security payment.
A lot more gratitude coming in. Thanks so much for doing this live stream. And John's saying he doesn't know how you can remember all of these rules.
Yeah, I'm kind of geeky that way. I read this stuff day and night because I geek out on it. I don't know what to say. I just read it and read it and read it.
All right, next question. My wife and I live in Thailand. I am 70. She is 57. How can I calculate her survivor benefits?
Well, it's pretty easy. If you're 70, assuming you are now collecting Social Security, her survivor benefit would be your amount that you're receiving now, and you would haircut it based on the age at which she started collecting survivor benefits. Now, let's all hope that we live to be 100, but let's just say that you don't. If she was less than age 60, well, she can't start collecting survivor benefits until age 60 anyway. And at that point, she gets 71.5% of your survivor or your primary insurance amount, with the exception of the widow's limit, which we talked about earlier. But that goes up very quickly to 100% as she approaches age 67. So what you really need is the schedule for your wife from when the survivor benefit is claimed. And as I said, it starts at age 60 unless she's disabled, then it's age 50, and that's 71.5%, and then works its way up to 100% at age 67. So even without the schedule, you can kind of estimate what the haircut would be because it's pretty linear from age 60 to age 67.
All right, Sarah's asking, my husband passed at 56. Would it benefit me to wait until 70 to collect his? I'm currently 60. Will his grow or only mine past 67?
Only yours. And his, if he was 56 when he passed, then the SSA gives you credit for him being full retirement age. So if his primary insurance amount was $2,000 a month at full retirement age, that becomes your base. And so depending on when you file, that's the haircut on that base. because he had not filed for Social Security, the SSA gives you credit, or gives him credit, I suppose, for having filed at full retirement age. So that is number one. Look at what that means for you in terms of that amount. Compare it to what you could actually earn claiming the survivor benefit and letting your own benefit grow. If almost always, and this is that big disclaimer I gave at the beginning, but almost always, if they're similar at your current age, you're better off claiming the survivor benefit and letting your own benefit grow, because then your own benefit will continue to grow to age 70, whereas the survivor benefit, your age 70, not his age 70, your age 70, and the survivor benefit, you can't get more than 100% of that amount, even if you're age 70. So at age 67, your full retirement age, you max out at 100% of the survivor benefit. So I would consider letting your own grow, if they're similar, up to 124% age 70.
Okay, and as we move to the next question, and we encourage you to keep putting your questions in regarding survivor benefits, we do have quite a few questions coming in outside of that. And if we do have time, we'll come back to a few of those, but we're going to continue with the survivor benefits. So we're not skipping your questions, we're just sticking to the topic for now. And if we can get to those, we will.
And if we want to intersperse a few others, we can do that as well.
Okay. Cindy's asking, I have a complex situation for claiming survivor benefits. What's that email address that you mentioned earlier?
It's livestream@holyschmidt.com. Livestream is one word.
Okay. Flora and Fauna. Social Security Administration requested the death certificate and marriage certificate 3 years ago. Would I still need to submit these documents if I choose to collect my survivor benefits 2 years from now?
That is the question of the ages. There's a lot of change happening at the SSA, a lot of frustration, a lot of automation. The fact of the matter is, there are two schools of thought, and this is a politically neutral channel. We don't take sides. The only side we're on is yours. But every time I say something, somebody tells me either I'm a Biden lover or a Trump lover, because it supports an idea. So what's happening at the SSA is very uncomfortable for everybody on this channel, everybody who's watching this live stream. But there are some things happening that there's technology from the 80s and 90s still being used. So it does need to be updated. So I don't know the answer to your question, because I don't know what the new rules are going to be. I would say historically, if it was in a file somewhere, it probably was accessible, but 2 or 3 years from now, I'm not sure. So if you have a copy of it, keep it, scan it, send it to yourself by email, or lock it in some sort of digital vault. Don't lose it. If you don't have a copy of it, something you might want to do is contact the SSA and see if you can get a copy of the documents you filed with them. Be ready to wait on hold for 68 minutes. I think that's the average right now. But if you don't have it, they probably do, at least at the moment.
Okay. How is the survivor benefit calculated?
It's a pretty simple calculation, really. It's the amount that the primary insured would have received at full retirement age if they passed before full retirement age and had not collected, or if they passed after full retirement age, it's the amount that they would have received had they filed at the date of death, or their actual amount, one of those. So they're going to fall into, I haven't filed yet, or I filed. If I filed, then the answer is that's the base. And then that number is haircut depending on the age of the survivor. If they're under full retirement age, the haircut ranges from 71% up to 95.9%, depending on if it's age 60, 50, if they're disabled, all the way up to age 66. If they're age 67, assuming that's their full retirement age, then it's 100%. So that's the haircut. And as I said, I'll put this out in the next week or two, so you have the actual schedule. Percentage of survivor benefit is the column you're going to look for.
Okay, next question is, what is the widow's limit and how does it work?
I think we asked and answered this question already, but I'll just discuss it again. The widow's limit is the minimum that you're going to receive if your partner collected early, let's say age 62, and they would receive 70% of their Social Security payment. The SSA has put a provision in there that says that we don't want you to get a percentage of a small percentage, so we're going to put kind of a floor in there, and that floor is 82.5%, as long as you don't file for the survivor benefit before age 62 and 9 months.
All right, Carla's asking, my husband passed away in 2022 at age 57. He had drawn a Social Security disability payment for 15 months prior to his death. I retired this year at age 61. What will my Social Security benefits be calculated on?
So if you're talking about your own primary insurance amount, the easiest way to explain this is just go on to my Social Security and look at your work history. Your Social Security payment is based on your best 35 years of earnings. That 35 years is present valued, or it's brought into today's dollars, and that's all divided by 420, added together divided by 420, and that's called your average index monthly earnings, and that's fed into a formula. It's a believe it or not, it's not that complicated, but it's 3 different calculations, and the SSA makes it very complicated because they try to put it into one. But basically, it's your historical earnings in today's dollars, your best 35 years, all added together and divided by 420. That's the number of months in 35 years to give you your historical average earning per month, and then that's put into a formula called bend points. But usually the longer you work, the higher the number, because people earn more later in life than they do earlier in life, and it's your best 35 years.
How old do the kids need to be to receive Social Security dependent benefits?
I think the question is actually not how old do they need to be, it's what's the last age possible. I think that's what the person's asking. The earliest age a person can claim survivor benefits is 0, and or dependent benefits is 0. The latest depends on a couple of different situations. The situation number 1 is if they are in high school, they can be as old as 19 years and 2 months. If they're not in high school, it's 18. And if they became disabled before age 22, then they can claim dependent benefits forever, really. I suppose as long as they remain disabled. Hopefully they're not. But that doesn't go away with age, whereas the other dependent benefits do. Now, in addition to that, there's an amount that each child receives. If it's a single child in a family, it's 82.5% of the primary insurance amount. If it's 2 or more children, it's 75% each. And then the third calculation is really something called the family limit. And the family limit is somewhere between 150 and 180% of the primary insurance amount, and that's usually basically the spousal portion, or the survivor portion plus one child. Usually is what, as you get there pretty quickly. If your number of children and your own survivor benefit exceed between 150 and 180%, then everybody is cut back pro rata. So if someone was making $2,000 as their primary insurance amount, that means that 150% the family would share $3,000 a month. Ironically, and probably appropriately, the higher the Social Security payment, the lower the percentage. So a family with a very large Social Security payment is going to be closer to 150%, and a family with a lower survivor benefit, lower deceased benefit would be closer to 180%. But it's a complex formula. The larger your payment, the lower the family limit.
Okay, say my wife is getting spousal benefits with me, full retirement age, and it's $1,300. I die next year. Can she stop the spousal until she gets to full retirement age and then start survivor benefit at my, say, $3,500 a month?
Yeah, you can. Your wife can claim survivor benefits anytime between age 60, and she wouldn't want to claim past age 67 because she's just throwing money away. But if your benefit is $3,500 a month, and your wife is to say that she's age 61, that's approximately 71% of that is a survivor benefit. She could grow it to 100% by waiting to age 67. So yes, definitely.
Okay, great. What is the family maximum when it comes to Social Security survivor benefits?
Yep, that's what I just covered off a minute ago. The family maximum is the amount, and that's probably why the question came through. I felt like I wasn't clear on that, so I'll take a second run at it. The SSA isn't going to give you unlimited amounts of money. If you have 10 kids, then the SSA isn't going to give you 75% of your primary insurance amount per child, because it would be a huge number. And so what it does is it sets a maximum that a family unit can receive from the SSA, and that maximum is between 150 and 180% of the deceased's primary insurance amount. And so the more children you have, the more likely you're going to be to breach that limit. And I've always found it interesting that this was a locked-in limit, but there are some benefits that don't have a limit. For example, if you're talking about survivor benefits and divorced spouses, well, divorced spouses can collect Social Security survivor benefits as long as they were married for 10 years or longer, and they didn't remarry, or they were remarried after age 60. And if they remarried and then were divorced, that's fine too. But as long as they're not currently married, or they remarried after age 60, that's probably a better way to describe it. The pamphlets all describe it the first way. But you could have 5 ex-spouses. You could get married at 20, get divorced at 30, get married at 30, get divorced at 40, and work your way up and have 5 ex-spouses, and that would not affect the family limit. So you could have 4 or 5 spousal survivor benefits, and that doesn't affect the family limit. But the minute you have a one spouse and 3 kids, you're probably going to be over. It seems a little bit skewed, but there are much smarter people than me that figured these out, and there's probably a reason for it.
Okay, another question. I'm currently 68 and receiving survivor benefits. The Social Security Administration just sent me a letter saying I could receive a higher benefit now on my own earnings. Won't my own benefit continue to grow until age 70?
Yes. So they both can exist in the same reality. If you are age 66, your amount that you have from your own Social Security payment is probably about 108% of your primary insurance amount, but it would be 116% at age 69 and 124% at age 70. In that scenario, I suppose it depends on what the survivor benefit is, of course, but I think most people would look at that and say, is it really worth giving up that big jump in my own benefit between 68 and 69, 69 and 70, because I can get a little bit more now versus a lot more later, because you are receiving the survivor benefit now. It sounds like it's pretty close to that 108% that you would be receiving if you switched. So let's assume your survivor benefit was 100%, and you could switch it to 108% now, or 124% in 2 years or 3 years. Well, or I guess it would be 2 years, 68 to 70. To me, that seems like you might want to consider waiting until age 70 before you collect your own Social Security benefit. But you really need to do the math, take out the calculator, look at your own life expectancy, talk to your doctor, all of the stuff that people would do to compare and contrast. But you're thinking the right thought. You're directionally you're asking the right question.
All right, this might be a similar question, but can I get my own survivor benefit and my own Social Security on my own work record at the same time?
It's not the same question, but it is a question that gets asked all of the time, which is, and I'll tell you the genesis of the question, and I'll tell you the unfortunate answer. So the unfortunate answer is no, you can't claim a survivor benefit and your own Social Security benefit at the same time. The genesis of the question was, when we were together before he or she passed, he had his and I had mine, and there's probably a spousal benefit in there. So there's a benefit to the family unit. And why wouldn't that benefit exist if there's something called a survivor benefit? Well, the SSA doesn't make that distinction, although I think that there's a lot of talk about this particular point. This particular point has been debated at length for a long time, and it's usually, the debate is usually, why is it that when a couple is married and they have the same set of bills, they get both a primary insurance amount and a spousal benefit, but when the person departs, all they're left with is effectively the primary insurance amount with potentially a haircut. And so it's a good question, but unfortunately the answer is you either get the survivor benefit or you get your own benefit. You don't get both.
Okay, great. We have 3 minutes before the top of the hour, and I'm happy to say that we made it through all of the survivor benefit questions, but we have time for a few more unrelated to survivor benefits. Fast Eddie is asking, I turned 62 this year. If I collect Social Security, it'll pay me just under $1,600 a month. My wife is going to work another 2 years. She makes more than $200K. Would I be better off waiting to 64 to take Social Security?
Would you mind repeating that? There's a lot of data in there.
Yes.
By the way, Fast Eddie, I love the name Fast Eddie. That's cool. All right. So.
Okay, I turned 62 this year.
Okay.
If I collect Social Security, it'll pay me just under $1,600 a month.
That's 62.
Yes, my wife is going to work another 2 years.
Okay.
She makes more than $200K. Would I be better off waiting till 64, essentially when she's going to stop, to take Social Security?
So this sounds like the spousal benefit. So the spousal benefit is not based on your wife's age. It's based on your age when you file for the spousal benefit. And first of all, if the spousal benefit, in order for you to claim the spousal benefit, your wife has to go first. So she has to claim Social Security first, and then you can go second. You can't claim the spousal benefit if your wife hasn't filed for her own primary insurance amount. Sounds like if she's making $200,000 a year, that the Social Security payment is going to be a fairly large one, and the combination of her benefit, assuming that that's her historical earnings as well, she would have exceeded the Social Security maximum historically as well. But it really comes down to the absolute dollars, if that's what you're trying to maximize, that you can get, because your wife's going to have to go first. So if your wife claims before full retirement age, she's probably going to be giving up a lot of money versus waiting until age 67, assuming that that's her own full retirement age. So I think I would look into what she's going to lose by going first. Directionally, that would be my suggestion. Look into what she's going to lose by going first, which would enable you to claim the spousal benefit.
One last question. I have a general question that this is coming from Crabby Human. I have a general question that relates to any early retiree. Is the estimate on your Social Security statement fairly accurate if you have not worked in a number of years? In my case, 10 years.
Yeah, probably. People find out all the time, particularly if you're coming up on filing for Social Security now, that maybe an old employer or two didn't file the right paperwork and they did some things back in the 80s and 90s that they shouldn't have done. So check your earnings history to make sure that what was reported was correct. You can have that fixed even if you have a dishonest ex-employer. And there are a lot of people back in the 80s and 90s that people weren't going to prison for the things that they go to prison for today back then. So check your earnings history. You might want to get that corrected if it doesn't look right. And they have having made the comment about the SSA having some older technology. They still do have enough technology there so that they can help you track it down.
We are at 8:01, so we are out of time for questions. Just want to let you know, Geoff, that there's a lot of really nice comments coming in. Thank you for this live stream. Thank you very much for this. Sincerely appreciate your time and effort. Lots more coming in, so thank you, everyone.
That's my pleasure, gang, and we are over time, but I'll just make 2 announcements. We'll do this again in 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, I'm going to announce a project I've been working on really for about 6 months. It's taken 50 hours a week of my time, in addition to filming 3 to 4 videos per week and doing a lot of other things. I've been working pretty extensively on this, and I'm pretty proud of it. I'll let you know what it is in 2 weeks after it goes through the beta testing phase, which will start probably on Friday. All right, gang, so I'll see you in 2 weeks. Don't worry, I'll find you by email. There'll be an announcement on YouTube. Everything will come up at 2 weeks from today, which is 2 Tuesdays from today at 7 o'clock. I'll meet you back here. Take care, everybody, and have a good one. Thanks for staying up late with me, and talk to you soon. Bye now.